Hello, traveler. Have you ever felt uncomfortable walking into a room full of people, that immediate tension in your chest, or gotten nervous just thinking about having to speak in public, your mind racing through all the things that could go wrong? Well, that is a common thing, a shared human experience. All of us, at some point, are going to feel a certain amount of social discomfort, that awkwardness in unfamiliar social territory. But there is a big difference, a crucial distinction between being a shy person and having social phobia. And understanding this difference is essential for knowing when that discomfort is just a personality trait, part of who you are, and when it is something that needs attention and care, something that requires support. And that brings us to today's lesson. Let's look at this more closely. Let's dig deeper. Psychology calls the act of avoiding social situations out of fear or discomfort. It calls this social avoidance. And this is a maladaptive coping strategy, a dysfunctional way of dealing with anxiety. In other words, social avoidance is a way of trying to escape from something that causes anxiety, to run from what makes us uncomfortable. But this escape, in reality, only reinforces the problem, makes it stronger. Because when someone avoids people, meetings, conversations, or any situation that involves social interaction, they're trying to protect themselves from what they fear, building walls around themselves. Maybe they want to avoid judgment, criticism, or even just the simple gaze of others, that feeling of being seen and evaluated. And the problem is that this protection comes with a very high price, a cost that compounds over time. It prevents growth, blocks development. It weakens relationships, and over time it feeds the fear even more, making it larger and more powerful. And there is more. Social avoidance behavior keeps the anxiety cycle active, spinning in endless loops. Because every time the person avoids an uncomfortable situation, every single time they turn away, the brain learns that running away is the best way to feel safe, that escape equals security. And of course, in the short term, there is relief, immediate comfort. But in the long term, this relief transforms into a prison, walls closing in tighter and tighter. And another important thing is that behind social avoidance, and especially behind social phobia, there are deep emotions and experiences that shaped this behavior, that molded these patterns over time. Feelings like fear, insecurity, and low self-esteem, they're at the center of this issue, at the core of what is happening. To understand this better, it is important for you to know that shyness itself is a personality trait, a characteristic. It is a natural tendency to feel uncomfortable or reserved when facing new social situations, when stepping into unfamiliar territory. So shy people usually take longer to open up and relax, to feel at ease. But with familiarity, with repeated exposure, they can indeed adapt and interact normally, finding their rhythm. Social phobia, on the other hand, which is social anxiety disorder, is something much more intense and debilitating, far more impairing. Social phobia is recognized as an anxiety disorder that involves a persistent and irrational fear of being evaluated, being scrutinized, being humiliated, or being rejected in social situations, okay? And this fear can be so strong, so overwhelming, that it provokes physical symptoms like rapid heartbeat, trembling, excessive sweating, and even panic attacks, the body responding as if to mortal danger. And neuroscience explains part of this, gives us insight into the mechanism. Studies using MRI scans show that people with social phobia exhibit hyperactivity in the region of the brain connected to the fear response, the alarm system running hot. And this means their brains react to social interactions as if they were real threats, genuine dangers, even when they're not, even when they're completely safe. And these patterns, usually they have their origins in previous experiences of rejection, of bullying, of constant criticism, or overly controlling family environments, contexts that taught fear. It is that thing where when a child grows up in a context where mistakes are punished as something horrible, unforgivable, or where judgment is constant, relentless, They internalize the idea that being observed is dangerous, that visibility equals vulnerability, and this fear can crystallize, harden into stone, and be carried throughout adult life, a weight that never lifts. So for someone who went through this, for those with these formative experiences, avoiding social contact might even seem, at first, like it is an intelligent solution, a smart protective strategy. The person thinks, if I don't go to that place, I won't feel bad, I can stay safe in my bubble. But this thought is a mental trap, a deceptive promise. It creates the illusion of safety, the feeling of protection, while silently it expands the territory of fear, giving it more ground to occupy. So you see, avoidance functions like a type of emotional painkiller, temporary relief. It reduces discomfort for a while, numbs the immediate pain, but deep down the problem keeps growing, spreading its roots deeper. And each avoided situation is a lost opportunity to learn that nothing catastrophic happens when we expose ourselves, that we can survive what we fear. In fact, research in cognitive behavioral therapy shows that gradual and controlled exposure to social situations is fundamental, absolutely fundamental, for breaking the cycle of avoidance, for dismantling this pattern. When the person faces, little by little, step by small step, what they fear, their brain begins to reprogram its responses, to rewrite the threat assessment. It learns that all that danger isn't real, that the catastrophe it predicted never materializes. And over time, with consistent exposure, the anxiety decreases, loses its grip. The central point, therefore, is this: running away from social interactions blocks human potential, locks away what we could become. Every time you avoid a conversation, an opportunity to express your opinion, or to meet someone new, you are closing a door to your own growth, shutting out possibility. Life, it happens in encounters, in those moments of connection. It is in the gaze of others that we learn more about ourselves, discovering who we are through reflection. And when someone isolates themselves out of fear, withdraws from the world, that person loses precisely the experiences that could strengthen their self-confidence and reframe the fears they have, transform their understanding. And notice that confrontation doesn't mean throwing yourself into uncomfortable situations in a reckless way, diving in without preparation. Rather, it means taking small steps, manageable increments. Start with something simple like greeting someone, participating in a brief conversation, or staying a bit longer in a social environment, just a few minutes more than feels comfortable. Beyond that, it is essential to work on the emotional roots of this fear, to address what lies beneath. Therapies based on mindfulness, acceptance and commitment therapy, and cognitive behavioral therapy are proven to be effective for restructuring those automatic negative thoughts, those reflexive judgments, and for helping to develop social skills, building capacity. And the practice of self-compassion is also fundamental, absolutely crucial, because many people who suffer from social phobia are extremely critical of themselves, their own harshest judges. They think this is an unforgivable flaw, a shameful weakness. So learning to treat yourself with kindness and to understand that making mistakes or being judged is part of life, part of the human experience, this is a decisive step for breaking the cycle of avoidance, for finding freedom. In the end, the difference between shyness and social phobia isn't only in the intensity of the fear, how strong it feels, but in the impact it has on the person's life, how much it limits and constrains. Shyness is a characteristic, a trait, and it tends to diminish as the person gains familiarity with people and places, as comfort builds over time. Social phobia, on the other hand, is an obstacle, a barrier, and every obstacle can be overcome with the right knowledge, with emotional support, and with appropriate treatment, with the right tools and guidance. And if you recognize yourself in this pattern of avoidance, if you see your own story here, remember this: the problem isn't feeling fear, isn't the emotion itself, but rather letting fear prevent you from living, allowing it to steal your experiences. The path to overcoming begins when you decide, even while trembling, even with shaking hands and racing heart, to take a step toward people, to move in the direction of connection. Because it is in human connections that life gains meaning, finds its purpose, and it is by facing discomfort that you discover the strength that has always been there inside you, waiting to be claimed. Stay safe, traveler. I'll see you on our next journey.